Hi, this is Brian from Daystar Adventist Academy, and I'm going to show you how to pollinate the squash family. That would be all the cucurbits, cucumber, winter squash, summer squash, and watermelon as well, melons. So you take the male flower and you use the pollen from the male flower to pollinate the female flowers. So they have a male and female flower, and I'll show you how to identify that difference. So you may be wondering, why do you have to pollinate? Well, we're in a greenhouse, and so not as many bugs to do the job, so we have to take over, and this sort of ensures a pollination. So I'm looking around here. These are green zucchini here, and this is a golden yellow zucchini here, and obviously this is a fertilized female part. You can see the blossom has withered. And here's a new one, or two. Well, actually there's a male and a female there. Can you see the difference? The female has the yellow fertilized part below, and the male just has a stem. There's several males there. There's a beautiful male flower right there. So I'm going to peel off these petals off the male flower so that we have the centerpiece with the pollen, and let's see if we can get that to focus. And then so we're going to take this and insert it into the female flower and spread the pollen on the female part. So we have some little friends here helping already. As you can see, the female centerpiece is much bigger. So we're working on the golden zucchini now. Simple as that. So here is one of the golden zucchini flowers. It looks just the same as the green zucchini. And in the center you have the pollen-bearing part, which in the male flower is called a stamen. And the most flowers have both female and male parts. But with zucchini, it's unique in that it has only the stamen, the male part, with the pollen on it. And so then this is the golden zucchini female flower, and you can see it has what's called the pistil, where the pollen is received and finds its way down to fertilize the ovum. And so I'm just going to take the male and pollinate, but it would be better to take the petals off again. So here we've removed the petals very simply. By the way, they're edible and quite delicious, and in fact some farms uniquely grow the squash for the flowers and sell them, market them. Of course, you can take off the males and use those without affecting your fruit production, as long as you reserve some for pollination. They're quite delicious and quite colorful. I've eaten them on a pizza in Italy, and you can eat them in salad raw. So raw or cooked, they're good. A lot of parts of plants that we don't use in the regular market system are edible. You just have to consult and find out how to use them and what parts those are. So you may be asking the question, how do I know which types of plants in a greenhouse that need hand pollination? And of course you can simply Google it. You can look it up in a gardening book if it has that information. Tomatoes, for instance, will tend to self-pollinate just by picking tomatoes, just by any sort of shaking. So we don't really have to hand pollinate the tomatoes in the greenhouse. And so when you're finished pollinating and it's still breakfast time, you can eat it. Wow, sweet. Tastes really good. Sort of like green beans with more sweetness. Very tasty. And don't forget, you can eat the petals too. Not quite as sweet as the stamen, but it's sort of like a sweet lettuce. Almost fruity. So instead of peeling off the petals, Why not eat them all? I like this job. Gardening is so much fun. We've done the green zucchini and the golden squash. But as I was pollinating along here, I suddenly noticed that we had some other yellow squash looking things that weren't golden zucchini. They're actually summer squash. They look quite similar, except they have more of a bulbed end. So I'll show you those. So here you can see this paler yellow, little different shape. It's got sort of a bottle shape to it, and this would be what I recall this would be the summer squash. Very similar to the zucchini. In fact, the zucchini is just a squash of a certain variety that's particularly liked for cooking, but really sliced and frying is one of the most common ways. This is very similar in taste and can be marketed the same way. Oh, looks like we got a leak over there. Always plenty of work to do in farming. So you can see the summer squash, yellow summer squash, is a little different flower. It doesn't separate all the way down to the base. It's more sort of a disc shape, and it's just as good to eat. I like this job. The stamen is much smaller on this one. So much variety. God makes so many beautiful things with all this different creative variety. It's a good lesson to us as teachers to remember that our students are different too, and they each need different individualized instruction. It's not always possible in the common system of education where there's lots and lots of students, but if you have a small classroom, it's much more possible to do, although I encourage all teachers to try to do it. So just as these plants all have their individual characteristics, so do your students. And God is teaching us a lesson in these things. So as I do this, what other spiritual lessons can we get? Well, think about the fact that you're trying to pollinate the heart of the student with the grace of God. And so you're trying to find that thing, that truth that appeals to that student and that opens the heart. It's, of course, the love of God that does that when the teacher is able to be a friend to the student. I mean, obviously, the teacher is an authority, but Christ was a friend to his disciples as well as a Lord, and as well as their king and their priest. And we really need to seek to call to the higher nature of the student. I was raised in a church system where the belief was that boys were bad and you had to beat the fear of God into them. And it didn't work very well, and as a consequence, I'm no longer in that faith. I was so glad to find this truth of the gospel of Jesus and learn of how Jesus worked to win people's hearts. So we're trying to fertilize the heart of the student with the beautiful flower of God's grace. And it is sweet to the taste. Another variety means I have to eat another flower. Of course, in a school setting where you may not have a highly developed market system already, although you may aim for that, you can afford to experiment. You could cross-pollinate and see what different aspects and expressions you're going to get in your fruit. And this is a wonderful discovery of God's system. There is a richness of genetic diversity that is just incredible. And even within that variety, you're going to get what they call off types. So we call them off types, but really in God's system, they're actually creative types. They create new traits, new flavors, new possibilities that might be suited to different areas. And that's just the wonder of God's creation. Again, God's teaching us a lesson in that. Remember, try not to put everything into a cookie cutter box. God's not like that. He has this wonderful ability of creativity And we need to be able to respond to that in human beings as well as in plants. Obviously, God's law is a constant, but how we work with people varies. This is where the difference is, and how they're sensitive to different things, and the traits and gifts they have are different. How they learn is different. And this is something you learn from farming. Not all plants are the same, and they don't all respond to the same treatment. You've got to learn and study the plant. You have to do the same thing with people to find the soft spot, to find the pistil in their lives that needs to be graced by the pollen of God.